the Transportation Advisory Committee, Tuesday, March 15th, 2016. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Batty?
Here.
Mr. David?
Present.
Mr. Jessic? Mr. Gary Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McEnroe?
Here.
Mr. Steve Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here. Okay, approval of the minutes of February 16th, 2016. Does anybody have any corrections, additions to those minutes? None. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Agenda analysis. Does anybody have anything that they want to change or add to the agenda today?
I just have that one item, Bob.
What's that?
I'd like to add, we just got some new information from the state on the selection process for the STIP, and we have built a spreadsheet around it just so we could kind of analyze some of the scores, and I thought I'd show it to you, see if that was useful or not. Use you as kind of a guinea pig before I decide whether or not we show it to the city commission or not.
Okay, so we'll do that after item 6A.
Yeah.
Okay.
7.
Citizen comments. We have one citizen so far, Luisa Gagno. Hi.
Hi.
Haven't seen you for a while.
Right. Glad to be back. Nice to see everyone. First, I did this at the Neighborhood Association meeting, but I want to thank Lisa and John and Martin for working hard on this issue of traffic. And but there's so much more to be done. So I took a look at this master plan, or whatever it's called. I think I looked on the internet, and it looks like there's more than one type of collector street, depending on the width. And I want to do more research about that and find out what that means. Are you familiar with the two different types?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I think there's a neighborhood collector and just a standard collector. So yes, there are some variations in our transportation system plan, which came out after that study.
After this. Okay, so it's a different document than what's attached to the agenda here.
I think what you're talking about, are you talking about the Public Works Center traffic study? Is that
Yes.
what this? Yeah. So, yeah, that's not part of our transportation system plan. That was the traffic study that was done in 2009
Okay.
when the master plan was approved.
Okay.
So
It's a beautiful document. It's like the best.
beautiful?
Yeah. I mean, it encompasses everything that we would want for our Oregon City neighborhoods.
Okay.
But our neighborhoods aren't like that right now. So I think it's something to strive for. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So, just wondered how things are going as far as the signs for the garbage can.
We have an update, so it's on the agenda.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 5A, Public Works Report.
So really what I wanted to put before you was this document that was that Luisa was just talking about. It's the traffic study as well as some of the conditions of approval that were included under the land use approval process. There's one document that I realized we didn't include in here, and we'll get it to you, but there was, so when the Public Works Center went through land use approval process back in 2009, this was what came out of the Planning Commission. And we included the transportation element. There was a lot of attachments that was in that original approval, but for your purposes, I wanted to get in your hands kind of the transportation component of that original approval. And the theory in giving that to you is so that you have that information. In the future, we'll bring back more details about some of the proposed changes that we're planning at the Public Works Center. But I wanted you to have the report that's included in here. Obviously, this is when we were proposing to place the whole department up at operations, so that we've scaled that back quite a bit, and instead of moving all the engineering and GIS group up to the operations center, we've now decided that we'll stay at this location, or at some point down the future, if we move up to the Mount Pleasant site, that part of the department will all go up to the Mount Pleasant site. So we've proposed scaling back the amount of staff that we'll have at the updated operations center. So this traffic report assumes something much greater than that. Bigger, all the department, which included code enforcement at the time. So just keep in mind that 2009 study reflected that actually some of the numbers would actually drop because we were proposing at the same time to close John Adams Street. So the neighborhood traffic along John Adams Street was, with the cut-through traffic, would have actually been higher than it would be if we were going to close that street and use it for public works use only. So that's how the consultant at the time, back in 2009, established that actually the traffic that will impact the John Adams Street part of the neighborhood would be better with public works there, albeit it would be less trips but more truck traffic. That was the 2009 decision and or analysis. And so I wanted you to have that. We're obviously going to go back through the land use process again with our operations master plan update, which includes the scaled down version. Whether we need to go through a new traffic analysis, we'll probably do an update to this traffic analysis, but probably won't go through the full traffic analysis, but I wanted you to have it. And the other thing that I want to get with you is the Planning Commission approved this 2009 master plan as a 5-0 vote. So full approval from the Planning Commission, but it did get called up at the City Commission. So the McLaughlin neighborhood at that time called that decision up to the City Commission, and the City Commission there's another notice of decision document that goes along with this that I didn't ask Lisa to include, so I'll get that to you as well, which further refines. In this document, there's actually a list of conditions of approval that were part of the land use decision, and you should have the revised conditions of approval that came out of the City Commission's decision. So you'll have that. So those will be before you. That's almost a starting point for us when we go back to the Planning Commission with an update to our master plan. Having that City Commission approved conditions of approval is a pretty important document to start with.
A quick question. So looking at the site plan, which is the very last page fold out.
Right.
So, I mean, could you in a abbreviated way indicate if you're going to reduce the number of employees that are going to be here, which of those facilities might not be built right now? I mean, this brainstorming, I guess.
So is everybody on the back sheet that's got kind of the colored drawing on it that shows different building numbers associated with it? I don't recall the numbering system here, but basically our original intent was to demo all the buildings on the lower yard and build a office building there that would have employee parking and customer parking that would access the site from Center Street. And then we would put most of our large vehicles up on the upper yard. And that's where we would have our fleet shop, and that's where we'd have most of our storage. That was the original plan. Acquisition of the armory was also part of that plan. And we also had an area that got a number 1 on it. It says it's at the kind of the number 1 that's at the top of the page, asphalt paved yard, if you see that on the drawing. There's a rock outcrop there right now. It's basically kind of a mound of basalt, and it's got oak trees on it as well, white oak trees. And so that was one of the things that came out of the City Commission, was that the city should do a better job preserving that rock outcrop and those white oak trees. So at the time in 2009, we showed a lot of parking areas over there and maneuvering areas over there and bin storage areas over there. So the new plan wouldn't include that removal of that rock outcrop or those oak trees. It'll still have some access around there, which we currently have, but it'll be to a much lesser degree. The other thing is we're proposing now to, instead of put the truck traffic up top or truck parking up top, to put it on the lower yard, so that'll focus most of the truck traffic where it currently is, which is on the lower yard, put employee parking, but obviously smaller vehicle parking up on top, and do our best to limit the amount of heavy truck traffic. We still think we need to put the fleet shop up in the upper yard area. In fact, possibly even use the armory. It's still our intent to acquire the armory building. So rather than build a new fleet shop, utilize the armory building. But we're still kind of working out some of those details. We don't have a specific plan yet, John. We have kind of what we're calling a bubble diagram that we need to go over with. There's some stakeholders from the McLaughlin neighborhood that we've been talking to. So we want to continue that conversation before we kind of lay out too many specific detailed plans. But generally, we're proposing a couple of things: less employees at this location, and a flip-flop of what we had planned before, which was more heavy truck traffic up on top using John Adams Street, and included employee parking on the lower level, so essentially flipping those and putting more truck traffic on the lower site, truck parking on the lower site, and less employee parking up on top. So there's some other details associated with that, but that's kind of what we're thinking of. The other thing is we're no longer proposing a 4-story building between the lower yard and the upper yard. So more to come on that. Just wanted to give you some information so that you could have that ahead of time and be thinking about that, and knowing that we're going to bring you some more detailed information on the Ops Center.
If the fleet shop goes on the upper level, what's the pavement condition on John Adams? Is the pavement and the road in good condition that it can sustain the heavy traffic up there, the heavier trucks?
Depends on where you look. There is some of the section that's currently private property that comes through the site. It's pretty much a gravel road, even though it's got signs of asphalt on it. So that's not necessarily. I think the lower yard or the lower road as it goes down, as John Adams goes down and into the neighborhood, it's also going to need some work, but it's still something that we're considering.
I was just hoping that was part of the budget for this project.
It would be part of the budget or part of our pavement maintenance program.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before
I have a couple, John. How is the purchase of the armory going? Do you know?
We haven't made any offer yet, but we know that the state we've got first right of refusal on that particular piece of property, and ever since I've been here, they've been interested in selling it to us.
Are there any protected trees or groves on the upper lot? I know that they were proposing some, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I don't know where that ever went, if it ever went through or not.
It's been a lot more than a year or two ago, but no, at this point there are no protected tree groves on the site. We haven't removed any, though.
A fueling station.
Mm-hmm.
Would that, have you got this far, would that be underground or above ground storage tanks?
Yeah, right now we're thinking something similar to what we have, which is a small amount of storage, like a 500-gallon storage. Originally, in this plan, we were thinking more of a drive-up fuel station that would have a little more capacity to it than that. But our biggest concern with fuel is making sure we've got fuel in case of emergency. And right now, my mind is thinking that the best place for that is where we have an existing drive-through lot, which is up at the Mountain View Reservoir site. So we probably won't have to store much in the way of fuel here, other than what we'd use typically for things like backhoes and things like that we typically don't drive up to the card lock station where we get fuel.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
My final question is on this kind of a personal thing.
Okay.
On page 7 and page 10, it references Company D history. That must have been a National Guard unit. And,
Oh, right, that's true.
yeah, I know of at least 2 other units that have been housed in that armory. Maybe that was just the original unit? 'Cause I personally belong to 2 different designated units that were housed in that armory over a period of years.
Okay, I don't know.
I think the history needs to be a little more accurate or better envisioned or whatever when it gets to that point.
Okay.
And that's all the questions that I had.
Got one, Bob.
Yes, go ahead.
Has the legal status of that park portion been established and finalized? Or is that before LUBA, or has there been an appeal by
Right.
the neighborhood up there?
So the neighborhood appealed it to LUBA. LUBA kicked it out and basically said it wasn't a decision for the LUBA Court of Appeals.
Oh, they have done that?
They've done that.
Oh, okay.
The neighborhood, I think they kicked it to a circuit court or I don't know which court, but a different court for a decision. And I think the neighborhood has appealed that decision. And last I heard, we have submitted documents to move it forward into yet another, in front of another legal body. But I can't say exactly. I'm not sure exactly which court it's going to, whether it's going back to LUBA or not.
That's going to affect the progress of the improvement of this site?
Well, I mean, we're not proposing to turn any soil before that decision, but we are going to move. We still want to move forward with the planning piece. Try to get the final plan approved.
Can things get any more complicated?
Yeah, well,
Sure.
Yeah, they definitely can. I think this project has been here since I've been here. So for 12 years, I've been dealing with this particular project, and it's been through a variety of different phases, whether it be master planning or facility planning or appeals or other site searches. So it's kind of had a long history to it, and I think I explained to the city commission, if you ever felt like a pinball on a pinball machine, that's kind of the way this project has gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've still got momentum, and we're still going to keep moving it forward.
And I worked on it before he came. And I noticed that you don't have the other road behind the armory, on the plan. The one that's under the old dead leaves.
Well, we're showing one end of it anyway, but it moves quite a distance away from the site, our back property line. You mean the old John Adams that used to go
No,
up?
the when you get up behind the armory on that flat, there was another road that went down toward Center Street and connected up to the entrance over by the house.
Yeah, we've seen maps of that. We just never have seen it. Nobody.
It's underneath under all the dead leaves. I used to walk on it.
Yeah, well, it's pretty rough then because it.
I think there's still
definitely
asphalt
some
down there.
grade changes there.
That's all the stuff. That's all the compost that's been piled on top of it.
You're not talking the roadway that goes up to the top.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the one that goes back down to Center
Well,
Street.
you'll have to go for a walk with me and show me that because I've looked for it and I've never really seen it.
Well, it was paved, so there's still asphalt underneath it because they were just dumping the old stuff on top of the asphalt.
Oh, okay. Well, it'd be good to see that because I think at some point in time we're required to build a pathway from kind of where the entrance is up near that house that we purchased. We got to somehow get a pathway up to the old roadway that goes.
Easiest
through.
thing to do is just clear off that old existing roadway.
Yeah, like I said, I don't remember it looking that.
We got to take them all a look at
It looks pretty rough to me. I see a lot of boulders and a lot of ivy and a lot of trees. But
Well, that was the refuge dump, and like I said, they put it on top of the asphalt that was there.
Okay.
Where you show the intersections with the existing traffic count and the estimated traffic count, and then you indicate whether it's A, B, C, or D. Maybe when you update that, if you have a C, you have no idea how close it is to a D unless you know what the parameters are. So, maybe you could say that
It's within.
for several Bs, give it, this is 4 points from or 20 points from or whatever, being a lower rate. So just so you get a feel for that.
Or maybe volume to capacity ratios.
Yeah, our standard has changed since this report was done. We had, with our TSP, we adopted the volume to capacity ratio. So that has definitely changed. So that would be a good thing to get updated. Because usually volume to capacity lists a percentage, right? So if you're at 1, you've reached capacity. If you're something less than 1, so that would probably be a better
Yeah.
ratio.
Okay, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I did have one question that Bob made me think about. If we're doing a fueling station, what's the condition of the current fleet, and is the city considering doing any natural gas at this time? Because if you're going to be updating a fueling station and the fleet is old, is that something that the city wants to consider is going towards natural gas? I know it's expensive, but hopefully the garbage disposal units would start using it, and there'd be other ways of helping fund a natural gas fueling station, and that would be a benefit to the city.
It's definitely an interest that we would look at in detail during kind of site development. But the challenge we have is just trying to get through that whole conversion from old to new.
It depends on the status of your fleet.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing a bunch of replacements soon, or potentially if the garbage haulers are going to be doing a major shift, now is the time that you might be able to partnership with them for something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just something I wanted to bring
up. It'd be
up.
nice to have a station here in town where we could get that kind of fuel. Whether we were to, I'm not exactly sure whether or not we would pursue an idea of on-site compressed natural gas, but off-site, which we've heard there's interest. I mean, we are kind of in a regional center, so it seems like a good place for a compressed natural gas station. And if there were, then we'd be a lot more likely to purchase trucks, because they've gotten, even the larger trucks are burning compressed natural gas, where they've got access to fuel.
Martin, about 3 years ago, put a lot of time into an extensive study on converting
He did.
city fleet.
Yeah, he did it. We did a detailed study on that, and the conclusion was it's a great idea if the access to fuel is available.
Which I was kind of thinking, is this an opportune moment if we're putting in a fueling station? But it doesn't sound like it. So.
Well, I mean, so you're asking, would we put in our own compressed natural gas fuel station? The neighborhood was pretty adamant about not even liking a gas or diesel fuel station on that site. Compressed natural gas seems like that would raise their eyebrows a bit as well, even if they agree that it's a cleaner form of fuel. So, I just don't know. I guess that at this point, Jonathan, but we've talked about wanting to go try some vehicles under compressed natural gas. And there are some agencies that have small compressors that basically have compressed natural gas on site, where they convert liquid gas into compressed gas. But with this reconfiguration and trying to essentially create a smaller footprint, I'm not sure we could accommodate some diesel fuel, some gas fuel, and compressed natural gas. That would probably be problematic for us. Can't say for sure. I haven't looked at it, but just my hunch tells me that's one more system that we would have to build on site that would make it that
More
much
effort
limited.
than what it's worth? You'd have to invest more money than the payback?
I guess you guys are asking me questions that I haven't fully studied, to tell you the truth. It may be more economical. I don't know. But we haven't looked at it that closely yet.
But supply is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, unless we want to order liquid gas and buy the systems to compress it and then store the compressed gas on the site,
Oh,
I think the better option would be kind of what we're doing with our regular fueling, which our regular fueling, we go down to Stein Oil and we acquire fuel. If there was a Stein Oil that had compressed natural gas, then we'd look harder at a fleet that that used compressed natural gas, because they burn cleaner, more efficient. There's lots of advantages to compressed natural gas if you have a fuel source.
But they're not cheap, the fuel source.
Right.
No.
Yeah, they're not cheap, and then you got the conversion of vehicles, right? Or you start buying new ones that are that's probably where we'd go. We'd probably start buying vehicles that were compressed.
As you turn your fleet over, you
Right.
start buying
Right.
the new ones. You wouldn't retrofit your old ones. That wouldn't be cost effective.
I would think most we wouldn't. We might try a few retrofits just to see how that goes, but yeah.
You had something about the Malala Avenue, Willamette Street intersection crosswalk?
Right. So the let me make sure this is the same one. So Gaffney Lane neighborhood, Amy Wellhite came to or no. This is the wrong one. We jumped over the Drive Safe Oregon City campaign. So, do you mind if we go back to that one?
Yeah, where is it?
Number 2. So under number 2, and just another update. We're still in planning to move forward with the stickers for the recycle bins and yard debris bins, and even garbage cans for that matter. But so I think the last time I reported, we have been they're not inexpensive. I don't remember the unit price. Was it like
$5.98 per decal.
per decal?
How big's the decal?
It's 8 3/4 by 13
Yeah.
inches, and it fits nicely on the can. We had a little. We wanted to make a couple of edits to our graphics. We're ready for that. The B&B Leasing has agreed to sponsor 50% of the cost, and I think if we ordered 1,500 of them, it was just under $10,000. I don't remember the exact number, but so we had some budget for that we were planning to spend, but we didn't have $10,000 to spend on that. So B&B Leasing was kind enough to not only give us permission to allow the stickers to go on their cans, but also help fund a part of that. And that reminds me, logo for them needs to also go on these. So that's something we need to talk about. But
That doesn't leave us any money for anything else then?
it consumes most of your budget. Not that you guys have much to spend on things, but most of that's covered under the city's budget.
We haven't had our annual banquet yet.
That's true. And I was talking, that's funny that you bring that up, because I was just talking to Kathy Griffin. I noticed the library and the parks group, they get a little food.
Good for you. Good for you.
I was thinking that maybe we needed to up the ante a little bit. But yeah, that's true, Bob. Most of the funding, this would consume most of the funding that for this year for the TAC. Again, moving forward with kind of this idea of summertime implementation, working with the McLaughlin neighborhood to be kind of the pilot program, although I don't think it's going to take long, and that's going to catch on, and other neighborhoods are going to ask for something similar. But we've been sharing with the other neighborhoods that McLaughlin neighborhood wants to be the guinea pig.
Now, was that $5,000, was that the annual allocation that you went after, or was it the biennium?
I think that's for 2015 and 16. Yeah. What I don't remember is what we budgeted in the next year, Bob, whether it was 5,000 or something else. I'd have to look at that. But the thing that occurred to me as we're hearing support for this program and interest in getting the stickers is we've agreed that we use the McLaughlin neighborhood to distribute those. Obviously, they get probably the most cut-through traffic as any neighborhood in the city. I thought about allocation because 1,500 stickers might seem like a lot, but it could go pretty quick, and maybe we ought to think about how to distribute those, kind of like what they do with their funding for the various neighborhoods. And
So if you're in a 6-house cul-de-sac, you may not need them, huh?
well, that's true, and I think that's important when distributing these. That at one point in time, we talked about going to the safety fair and maybe the farmers market, or having kids distribute them.
How about the Boy Scouts?
Boy Scouts distribute them. I mean, the challenge with that is, and with any of those options, is just these stickers aren't cheap. They probably make more sense on some streets versus others. So I like this idea of the neighborhood subcommittees or committees taking that on, taking a little different approach to how they distribute those. I haven't really talked to the McLaughlin neighborhood to know exactly what they're thinking with that, but I sense that they're probably wanting to focus pretty heavily on those streets where they see the most neighborhood speeding. And that's probably true for all the other neighborhoods as well. There's probably some streets that you might be on, if you're on the end of a cul-de-sac, the only, I don't know who you're going to slow down other than your neighbor, right? So it might make more sense to focus on some of the neighborhood collectors, arterials, those kinds of streets, so that the local streets may have, an incident, but I don't know if we want to think about guidelines or guidance, if you will. Not guidelines. Guidelines sound too difficult, but just kind of some best management practices on how we distribute the few stickers that we have. And the other thing is, if a neighborhood, so how we allocate the 1,500 matters. How, when they get those stickers, how they distribute them matters. If they want more than their allocation, do we up the order and maybe they, contribute to those? Those are kind of some questions that
Hey,
I
John,
had.
has anybody looked at the routes, the areas of the city that B&B collects in on certain days, and correlated that to the main streets that we have? Because if, for example, McLaughlin, either all of it or the majority of it gets collected on Thursday morning,
Right.
and the only time those suckers are going to be out is Wednesday night and to about noon on Thursday. If they could be distributed a little more per the pickup pattern, you could have them out on Monday in one part of town, Tuesday in a different part, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in different parts of town.
And that's how you distribute them?
Uh-huh.
That's how you distribute
That's,
them?
yeah.
Yeah, I think-
That way everybody gets a chance to see them, if you
Yeah.
will.
I want to be cognizant of the fact that B&B Leasing, I think, has they've got a system. I don't know it.
Right.
We could talk to them about that, but I think they only pick up in Oregon City two days out of the week.
I think they pick up more than that, but I'm not sure. I know they run operations in other towns, but I'm assuming that they are duplicate of ours.
Well, we don't work those on
They
residential.
pick up me at Tuesday. What days do the rest?
Yeah,
of
that's a good
Tuesday.
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 Of course, we all live a couple blocks apart.
Yeah, right.
I pick up mine on Friday.
Friday, Tuesday, Friday,
Thursday?
Thursday. That's three days.
So that's 3 days.
yeah.
Yeah, mine's Friday.
So
as well.
there might be a fourth day.
Could be.
Yeah.
We'll ask him. We can ask him. So I guess what I'm hearing is they distribute, so there will be portions of the town that will see them on. And you're suggesting we change that even more?
No, I'm just suggesting that we look at what areas of our main roads pass through their collection time frames, so that we have longer span of them being on view to anybody than just one day a week.
Not a whole bunch of them in a row.
Yeah, and a whole bunch, yeah. It'd be
Well,
nice
we had
to-
originally decided to use the McLaughlin neighborhood as a testing ground,
Right.
but I think 1,500 signs just for McLaughlin would be a little bit overkill. I think that
Well, we
We wanted to test them to see if they were effective.
Yeah, we weren't. I mean, we have to order the 1,500, and that's citywide. So, that wasn't intended. Those 1,500 signs weren't intended for the McLaughlin neighborhood. They were intended for at least a year's supply that then would be distributed and eventually citywide.
Don't you want them on collector streets and arterials first, when they have priority for exposure? A residential street, a cul-de-sac, they're not going to be effective to the pass-through traffic.
I'd agree with that.
I mean, you got to have a strategy, or you're just going to, might as well throw them up in the air, really. Especially when they're, a limited number of stickers because of cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you work
Chairman?
that out with B&B, or is that something the city would?
Well, I'm just trying to get some input. I think, we can work with B&B and we can work with the neighborhoods. We could share them with, they could have maps. I mean, some of the streets in the McLaughlin neighborhood, I think that there's a lot more, neighborhood cut-through traffic because it's a grid system. So
But
they've got a lot more of those kind of
Like
streets.
A
in
Street, it's
McLaughlin.
a stop sign every block, so
Might not need them on
I
A Street.
didn't need them at all.
Yeah.
Of course, I
John?
notice some people treat those signs as optional.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
Sunday
Yeah,
is
so,
Church
I
on the
mean,
street for me.
let's not try to reinvent the whole thing here. Why don't you take a bunch of these suggestions, they'll be in the minutes, and kind of put together a little draft policy with McLaughlin as the kickoff, but then cover some of these things, and maybe as you're writing it all out, you can come up with a couple recommendations that would either be verbal guides as you hand them out to the neighborhoods saying, please don't put them on cul-de-sacs, put them on the busy streets, so something like that.
Okay. Are you guys okay with the distribution? What we do with the funding that the CIC and the neighborhoods get, they distribute it based on number of households. So we have a running list of households. Are you guys okay with that kind of a split as well?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
And then we could, how would we get them to the neighborhoods? Would we take them to the neighborhood association meeting with a presentation at that time and our desires of what streets in that neighborhood? I know for a fact in our neighborhood, in Park Place, there's only one main street, and that's Holcomb Boulevard. All the rest of them are little.
Yeah, I might give it
Well,
two.
you got Swan and you got Front, isn't it? And
You got
Yeah.
Apperson.
I mean, compared to a lot of the other neighborhoods,
Yeah.
our main streets are kind of minimal.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we
Swan
get
would
complaints
be-
from several. I mean,
Forsyth.
if you live on a street, people usually complain about speeding.
I want one.
That's right. All right, so we're okay with the. We'll work on some kind of a guideline,
Yeah,
if you will.
I had one
And-
quick question or comment.
Okay.
If B&B, how many new cans do they distribute annually within the city? If they could just slap them on, we don't have to distribute it.
Yeah, they don't want to do that.
Okay.
They don't want to. They've been kind enough to say yes, stick them on there. Here's the right kind of sticker so that it'll stick,
I got
but
it.
not stick forever, kind of thing. So, yeah, I understand their perspective too. So I want to be careful about the whole route changes kind of thing because they probably have that down to an exact science. And I
No,
don't wanna-
they do, but
You can always stick your can out the night before, right?
yeah, but then how do I put garbage in it?
Okay, so that's the update. Is that good? Okay. Yeah, so this Malala Avenue and Willamette Street intersection crosswalk signage. I can't. This one.
Yeah, did you want to at least show them?
Well, this one's a little bigger, right? But this is. I can't remember. Was this the one that they liked? Or was this? Yeah. Yeah. So that's probably a little bit bigger than what would go. Yeah.
But you can see the quality and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
durability of it.
And that goes on what?
That would be for the garbage can or
It
the
would.
yard debris or recycle bin.
That sign might even get their eyes up off of their cell phone.
Only if they saw it.
Okay, so the next item. Yeah.
Substantial. A good feel to it. Any feel on that?
So we just included some photos in here. Sometimes I'm losing track, but it's pretty much towards the back of your packet. It's the last page with photos on it, and I think somebody came here. I know we heard about it through the police department, but just on Malala Avenue, there was a complaint about crosswalk they wanted one of the rapid flashing beacons there was their main request. And so again, it's just to me another example that sometimes these requests come through TAC, sometimes they come through PD, sometimes they're just a phone call. And when the request makes pretty straight sense to us, we don't necessarily always bring that back to you for confirmation, but I just wanted you to mostly know that we are responsive to those calls, whether it's been to the TAC or not. And in this case, we added some pedestrian ahead signage, and we trimmed some trees to make sure there was good sight distance there. And it was already a striped crosswalk, but we just added the extra signage. So I thought I would add that information for your knowledge. And then let's see, First Streets. So I don't have a graphic for you or anything to share with you, but item number 4, First Street speed sign placement in Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association request. From what I understand, I haven't seen it myself, but from what I understand, our crew put up the speed limit signs that were asked for on First Street. So that piece is done. Martin's had a conversation. We got an email from ODOT on the request for some signal improvements at Gaffney and Caulfield and 213, and the response was a good response from ODOT, which is, look, this intersection's at capacity, and we already have significant, during peak hour, we already have significant backup on Highway 213. There are some adjustments that we could make, but in order to make those adjustments, they'd require a decision from the state transportation engineer, or at a minimum, their planning manager. So that tells me that the signal guy is not really that supportive of additional delay on Highway 213 during peak hours. But that's what would have to happen to add more time to the Caulfield or the Glen Oak Road turning movements, especially if we added a dedicated time slot for Caulfield Road folks that are trying to get out of that subdivision. So there's more work to be done there. We haven't completed that. That's something that came up at the last meeting, and I wanted to let you know that we're still looking at that and still working through that a little bit. But it's not resolved. The other options that they suggested that we consider were high-cost options, which included adding turn lanes, reconfiguring the signal to add more lanes on 213, kind of things that are pretty far beyond our ability to actually fund and implement, based on this kind of concern. So the other one was Gaffney Lane. We did talk Gaffney Lane at Malala, and again, there was this desire for a phase such that you could, have dedicated left turns there instead of left and through happening at the same time. And I think there are some signal controller things that we would need to do there, but the county traffic technician that does most of our signal reprogramming said, I don't want to make that kind of adjustment without detailed engineering analysis that gives us specifics on timing and gives us specific, it makes a recommendation on safety. So, that's a $5,000-6,000 study that we would have to do in order to get that done. And so we haven't made a full decision on that, but it's, we have to look at budget. We'll probably look at more towards the year end when we find out what kind of budget we have left to be able to spend on that kind of thing, and then make a decision at that time.
But technically it could be done.
Technically it can be done. Yeah. Actually, technically it probably has happened at that location already. It's probably flip-flopped. And that signal's been a problem for a long time. It's gotten better, right, with the pedestrian activity. It's gotten safer, but it's still trying to move a lot of traffic, especially when Fred Meyer's full steam ahead. And yeah, regular. And then there was one other one that we're looking at. In fact, that's why who said they saw me? You said you saw me on Malala. We were looking at Chardez. If you remember, that was another neighborhood request that we kind of look at adding a crosswalk there. If you remember, we applied for a grant for Malala not too many years ago, and we didn't get that grant, but that was one of the locations where we had kind of hoped to put in a crosswalk and maybe a median. I have a problem with just striping crosswalks, even if we put the signage ahead, because they kind of leave the pedestrian with this false sense of security that they can just step out in there. So I still have that concern. It's good sight visibility there, but we'd want to look at street lighting, and to be honest with you, we'd have to build new ADA ramps there, because we shouldn't be putting in a striped crosswalk and telling pedestrians to go there if we don't have a way for a wheelchair to get up and off the asphalt. So
I was going to ask you, John, about the handicapped.
Right.
What about the blind? That's a challenge for those people to crosswalk. Really, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. So are those crosswalks designed at a certain average standard, or are they designed for the handicapped? The weakest link in the chain, so to speak.
you mean along Malala Avenue?
Well, any place,
You got chirps on one of them.
Signalized intersections are obviously, they've got pedestrian buttons and things for them to use. What I understand about blind folks that use those kind of facilities on their own, they're very familiar with the route, and they typically don't cross at an unsignalized crosswalk.
And as I recall, which may be faulty, but I think if you put new handy push buttons in, they have to be audible as well as visual.
That's true. In this case, just what we have at Washington, or at 7th and
Monroe.
John Adams, the flashing, they're not necessarily what you would want. I think I can't remember if they don't chirp. I know they don't do that. They might vibrate though.
No, they don't vibrate either.
Okay, so they're not really sight impaired compliant. But that's for one, because you're not really stopping traffic. You're giving traffic an amber light that basically says caution, right? Look for pedestrian, and wouldn't recommend that as a compliant intersection for a sight impaired person, fully sight impaired.
Plus, you also have the truncated domes set into the concrete for a tactile surface for visually impaired.
That's true. Although this intersection doesn't have, there's one corner that has an ADA ramp, but it's an old ADA ramp, so there's no truncated domes on it. The other corner, which is probably the right location for the crosswalk, has no sidewalk. So there's an asphalt pathway that leads up to up to Malala Avenue, and then as you were to cross, that's where we'd have to build a ramp. So one corner we don't have sidewalk, but there is a walkway. People walk in the bike path, and they walk in this asphalt path area there. But on the other side, there's a sidewalk there, but there's no ADA ramp, so there's no drop there. So the more we were looking at the project, it is a good project, and I think it's the right location for a crosswalk. Not a crosswalk for probably sight impaired, but a good place for a crosswalk. It'd be nice to see the full sidewalk improvements wrap all the way around this one corner, take care of the ADA ramp on the other side of the street, and probably place a rapid flashing beacon there. And that's kind of along the lines of what we had intended when we asked for the grant. I think there was 3 locations where we were proposing to do rapid flashing beacon kind of installations.
I'm not familiar with that site. Is that because there's no sidewalk there because the site's not developed? Could system development charges be used for that?
There is, well, for one, the site's developed, but it's a single family home that was probably there back when it was a state highway. So everything on either side of that one parcel has got sidewalks. And so this one parcel is the one that's kind of, the frontage improvements were never developed. Whether we have the right-of-way there, I haven't checked yet to actually be able to build the sidewalk, but could we use system development charges for that project? We could, if a couple things happen. One, it was a specific project that was listed as funded on our SDC list, and two, if we identified a project. Yeah. So, I mean, if we not only identified it, but we actually, chose to build it. So,
It's, in my opinion, it's those missing links that complete a sidewalk network that are not a huge cost, but they really add a value to the whole system.
yeah.
So often you can complete a system by taking some money and putting it into a small project like that really completes a sidewalk network.
I'm at a crossroads with that whole corridor there, because I do feel like it was an award. It was a project that should have got a grant fund for it, and I still think it has potential with all the transit traffic along there. I think it scores well for those people who are objectively looking at the criteria. It would score very well. So, for instance, SDC funds were identified as a match.
Yeah.
And to spend just on that little project that we're talking about, first of all, because of the size, it would probably be fairly costly to do, just on a per square yard kind of project. And I'd really like to keep it in the mix of needs for that section of Boulevard, so that maybe in the not so distant future we can apply for that project again and hopefully be successful with that. The other option, which I'm hoping to take to Amy, is John's suggested this pretty regularly, which is to do a small local improvement district where maybe the city uses SDC funds or some other funding mechanism to fund portion of it, and get the neighborhood to contribute to a percentage of that as well.
Well, that actually sounds like a great project for Sheila Lyons and
Who's Sheila Lyons?
Like Peg ODOT. She
My
does
old-
lots of grants.
My old compatriot, the bicycle
So
guru.
Sheila Lyons with ODOT, that sounds like this would be a good grant candidate, and I think they're asking for grants right now. Let me look into my emails and see if because she was calling for some grants, I think.
Okay.
I'll get back to you on that.
We track
Sheila's a
those.
good contact for you.
We track those pretty close,
Yeah.
but I'm not aware of that one.
Okay.
Speaking of fill-in sidewalks, do you have any figure on what sidewalks cost per running foot?
Oh,
Average, just.
I'm trying to think of. Let me think about that one.
Okay.
Obviously, it depends a lot on where you're at. For
Yeah,
instance,
sure.
if you're in a residential neighborhood and trying to build a sidewalk,
If it's flat, or.
does it have a curb there as well as sidewalk? Are the requirements that they put in streetlights? Is it got?
Well, the reason I
does it
asked
have, does it have a ditch versus it needs to be piped? There's
Yeah.
just a lot of variables there. But I think typically a square foot of sidewalk, for instance, if you got a 5-foot sidewalk, it's probably in that $30 lineal foot range for a 5-foot
How much?
sidewalk. $30 per lineal foot of sidewalk. That's assuming there's a curb there and you're really pretty much just, kind of, but, it depends
Well,
on
the
how,
reason I asked that is
how
because-
much sidewalk are you going to build? That matters, I mean, there's a lot of,
Well, I don't know, I'm asked several times, I'm sure everybody else is too, why can't you fill in those sidewalk gaps? It's,
Money.
but it's
money.
Money,
I
yeah,
mean,
right.
It's money. There's a lot of places where filling in the sidewalk gap might not be that difficult. But
Every once in a while, you need property too.
And ADA
Mine would be
curbs
too.
cost money.
Yeah,
one of the projects that we'd like to do with sidewalk infill is right there, just I guess it would be west of the school on Gaffney Lane. The road gets real
Yeah.
narrow through there.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to try and do in-house, so use our own
Oh.
crews to build.
Yeah.
But we got to build sewer and we got to put curbs, and there's quite a bit to that. Move the utility poles, but that little project's been identified for several years, and we finally just, I think, decided that we'd use some of our construction crews from operations to try and build that piece.
One time I did an analysis on missing links in the sidewalk network system, and I used the schools as the primary target, so anything within a quarter mile of a school, and then the shorter the link was, the higher priority it got,
Yeah.
because it completed the sidewalk networks. And we want our kids to be safe walking to school, so that's an easy sell, because everybody in the community wants their kids to be safe.
Mhm.
So it's not such a political beast, and I think it's an easier project to sell, and also it's good for grants also. But I don't know if we've done that type of analysis to identify those type of projects here in the city.
We've done analysis of where our existing sidewalks are, which shows the gaps.
Which shows the gaps.
Yeah.
Then you could easily do a buffer around the schools and identify those missing links.
Yeah. Let's see. We talked about 213 and Glen Oak Road and the Caulfield intersection. Update on jaywalking code. So, Gary, I think this was related to a comment that you made, and we had in the notes to get the comparables from a couple other agencies. After I read it, I was trying to remember exactly your point, and I think that was that right now, well, for one, it reads a little more confusing than some of the other ones do. The other ones basically say if you're within 100 feet or 150 feet, you shall use the crosswalk.
Right, I asked this to be put on the agenda. It's been bothering me for a while that I see a bus stop, say on Warner Parrott Road, halfway between Beaver Creek and Leland Road, and there's no intersection there, but people are practically invited to jaywalk there to get to the apartments across the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's against the Oregon City ordinance, and it bothers me that half my neighbors, when they're walking across the street to the mailbox, the community mailbox, are jaywalking, and are theoretically subject to citation. I know you brought up a couple of months ago that marked crosswalks are safer than unmarked crosswalks, and I agreed with that. Some traffic engineers say that marked crosswalks give pedestrians a false sense of security, but I also think it's in most cases in residential neighborhoods in particularly, it's safer to cross mid-block than to cross at the intersection with unmarked crosswalks. You only have to look to see if cars are coming 2 ways instead of 3 or 4 ways. And I noted that the Oregon revised statutes don't prohibit jaywalking. They just say that if somebody is crossing at a location other than at an intersection or crosswalk, they have to yield to motor vehicles rather than the other way around. So I wanted to bring this up, and I reviewed these 4 that you have here, and I think the 3 that have crossing at a distance from a crosswalk is preferable to the existing ordinance in Oregon City. But I don't know what the procedure for changing an ordinance is.
Right. So we read it and we kind of agree with you, Gary. It's, for one, I'm not sure how much our police department's enforcing this. I'm sure glad they don't do it on this block of Center Street, because we cross multiple times during the day mid-block to get to the parking lot across the street where all the city vehicles are.
Sounds like time for a sting to me.
Yeah.
I'll make a phone call.
Even with the suggested rewrites, you'd still be.
I don't know if they know how to write a jaywalking ticket.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that was another question our attorney. So Lisa looked into this a little bit, and she handed me an email that basically the attorneys went in. Well, are we changing the enforcement piece of this too? And I don't think that was your intent. It was more trying to write it more realistic to what, the needs are for pedestrians to be able to get from point A to point B in a way that's not chaos, right? So I think the simpler language that, definitely Portland offers in theirs made a lot more sense to me. It seemed to make it a lot more clear. Now, if so code changes, it's a small code change to make that kind of change. I'd rather package that with a larger adjustment to code, and that's where I'd like to take it. And I just, what I don't have right now is clear understanding of when our planning department's planning to do more code adjustments, but that's how I'd like to pursue it.
There are some locations that, for example, in the residential area close to where I live on, let's see, it's I forget the name of the street even. It's between Warner Parrott and Tower Crest, and it's a fairly narrow street. And if there's two cars parked, the cars parked on both sides, it's hard for two cars to pass one another. But there's no sidewalks there, and for somebody to, if you wanted to cross the street, to walk across somebody's lawn, like back of the curb or out in the street around parked cars, to get to the intersection, that's still not really a desirable case. But I think something like Portland has would be preferable to what we have now.
Would maybe can we get a motion on that one, because I think that would be a good one to just if we had a motion, we could provide that language to our planning department and they could just add it to the list of code adjustments. And,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we forward proposed revision to the jaywalking ordinance to the planning board so they can package it with the other changes that they have in mind.
how about, can you add that Portland language? Because I think that one to me that one reads.
It would be similar to the one in Portland.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passed.
Let's see. So, let's see. So next month we're having a meeting with the Planning Commission, and I believe it's here, April 11th at 7 p.m. So I haven't figured out yet whether I don't know whether the Planning Commission gets food or not, guys. I don't know. We might make our food edition later in the year, but anyway.
We can sit over there and they can.
I don't think the Planning Commission does, to be honest.
No, they don't.
They don't.
You know.
I think there's only
You're on
one
planning, aren't you?
committee that does so.
You don't get fed, do you?
And I can't remember which
You
one
get
it
fed?
is. Historic review, maybe.
Before our meetings?
Yeah.
No.
You don't, yeah. So I don't think you do. So anyway, 7 p.m. for that, and I don't know what the room setup is going to be.
If we're here, they can be anywhere.
I think the planning commission trumps the tax. I don't harp on that much, but I'm
They could
sure.
be outside in the hall. I'll pass that on.
I was going to contact the
The chair.
chair, but I haven't been able to get his contact information. Could you get that for me, Lisa? Okay, just email it to me and I'll get a hold of him and
Charles.
try. Yeah, Charles.
I can't think of his
Something.
last name. Right.
And because I wanted to impress on him that we really don't want the meeting to go to 11 o'clock at night. And then will our meeting start time be 6 or 7?
7.
7.
7, okay.
This will be a work session, right?
Yeah. And really, I think it's going to be more of a presentation. So, so that's there. In addition to that, the last page just kind of gives you a website, because when we met last, there was, we had a good discussion about how to get the TAC a little more involved with land use, right? And so, without recreating some new tool, because I think what was suggested was maybe a map, of development that's kind of in the works, and then somehow knowing what point within the land use process or construction process that project was in is a tool we don't have, not yet. So I think our GIS group is working towards some kind of a map system where you may find any active land use, and you can click on that and figure out the details of that. We don't have that, but what we do have is all of our land use files are web accessible, and they attach all the details behind that particular development. They also have an email list, I think, that goes along with that. So when a project goes out, you can get on that email list. But the best way is to just have, I think you can actually go into the website and register, your email address and name, and you're saying yes. So I kind of
You
forgot the
register
detail.
as a subscription to their feed, and you can get it sent to your email or an RSS feed on your website, and you'll be updated with the land use notices as they come out.
Right. So, for instance, I don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to all the land use files that come through, but I get those in form of an email, and with a link that tells me how to, that I can go to get all the attachments that could go to that. So the same could be true for this group if you register, but you have to register, and then that gives you the opportunity to become familiar with that. If you want to bring that, we got to watch timing. That's the other thing, is the land use process and our meeting times don't always jive, and so it's back to, if you've got a concern about a particular project, you as a citizen can say, here's my written response to this, or email it around to the rest of the group and say, hey, can I get some consensus here on this being a problem? Share that. I think that's the best way, and really the Planning Commission considers all that written information. They then get those comments in their packet of information on when they're making the land use decision on that. And I think especially after our meeting on the 11th, they're going to be a lot more attentive to the concerns or the thoughts of members of the Transportation Advisory Committee.
John, one thing I'd like to see them discussed at that meeting is, when would a increment type of development actually go over a threshold to where it becomes a major problem? And basically, I'm going to use the hospital as an example. Every few years they add on something, and eventually they're going to have 3 or 4 blocks of building and stuff up there, when 20 years ago we had what amounts to a country 3-room hospital. And the difference in traffic between those two is pretty intense, but all the traffic analysis that is done for the planning people, to my knowledge, is based upon the improvement only and not the overall effect of everything in that structure. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to see them sort of start trying to grapple with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't have the answer, but I do know I'm under the impression the master planning process, so the hospital has an approved master plan and they're going through a master plan update. I think that looks at the total traffic load for the entire facility, but I'm going to leave that. I'm going to suggest you ask that question of the group, because well, for one, I'm not the planner.
Yeah.
And I don't always pay attention to
Yeah.
the specifics of that, but whether you could use a different example that where they've changed things and they didn't go through the master plan process. You're right. Sometimes that further contributes to traffic demands that in a scenario that's already pretty congested.
Yeah, it's not only just the planning, the technology of planning. It's the legal aspects of it, because the planning commission is getting painted into a corner the last 10, 15 years with these LUBAs and these appeals and this and that, and it really limits their approach to things because of the quasi-judicial process that they're put into. They're acting as almost like a court, and so the rules of engagement, so to speak, are, and it does get combative up there.
I know.
It's litigation, and we're not trained lawyers, but we're asked to sit like and decide things in that regard. So, like John says, timing and authority and jurisdiction and coordination, all these things go into these decisions, and there's tens of millions of dollars riding on these decisions because these projects have to be financed. And then you get a planning commission approval, and all of a sudden somebody appeals it to LUBA, and the banks take a look at this, they, wow. Or not only the bank takes a look at it, the developer takes a look at it, and he says, hey, forget it. I'm going someplace else. And it's happened. The last couple of years it happened in a big project there. So, when we ask, the traffic TAC to look at this, we're just looking in terms of coordination so that we don't do something up there at the planning commission that you guys down here, us guys down here, say, wow, what are we doing here? Why are we giving up a night? That kind of stuff. So that's pretty much the reason why I brought it up. I didn't want to, stir the kettle, open up Pandora's box. But planning commission can't be up there making transportation decisions when your responsibility down here is to advise and be left out of the picture. So there's got to be some adjustment here, and maybe this work session will come up with some ideas.
Well, it could be as much as, looking at the project when it comes through and go, that's a big enough project or a challenge, and maybe it doesn't have to be based on size, but that's a project that's got an impact. They all have impacts. So somehow we're not going to have the time or the energy to look at all the development, but there might be specific projects where you go, that's one where you either want the developer to come to this committee, or we want to carve out some part of our agenda to talk about that particular project. And so, that may be as simple as, you having access, registering, taking a quick look at the package, and then emailing Lisa and saying, hey, this is one that I'd like the TAC to look at. Can you get it on the agenda?
Well, I think one thing of interest to all of us would be the Willamette Falls Legacy Project and the ODOT input about Highway 99 and that whole area. The impact of that is going to be huge. So I think if we can get as early as possible information what ODOT has in mind to this committee, I think that would be good.
One, in that spirit, Lisa, let's put in the notes. The city just signed an agreement with ODOT for 3 projects that ODOT made as a condition of the land use approval for that concept plan that they put together, and we can share those with you next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Although
You mean
not
the May
April,
meeting?
the
Not
May
April.
Yeah,
May.
meeting. Thanks.
Could I ask a question here too, Bob? I went to this link that was in the backup material, and there were 2 land use actions shown there. One of them was Fred Meyer, and apparently from that, their proposed development doesn't really have any impact on public streets. But what I was wondering is, I was kind of interested in what will be the conditions imposed on a development. Now, we can get the application here, and they try traffic studies and so on, but even that Fred Meyer application said they would comply with any reasonable conditions imposed. But I'm sort of interested in how Oregon City works and what conditions are typically imposed on developments.
Right. So the conditions of approval usually show up later in the land use approval process. Right. So typically the staff report includes we've moved them from the back of the staff report to the front of the staff report, where there's a list of conditions of approval that are included with the packet that goes to the Planning Commission. And usually that first Planning Commission hearing has got those conditions of approval, and then almost nothing passes the Planning Commission on the first night. There's at least one other night, more like 3 or 4 other nights it seems like. So
Recently, yeah.
depending on, that Fred Meyer one probably won't be that way, but you take, Beaver Creek concept plan, how many, that's been through so many public hearings, I don't even think we count anymore. But, so as those public hearings move, lots of times there's either adjustments to the conditions of approval or there's additional conditions of approval. This document that we had for the operations center is a good example of that. And when we get you the other copy, which is from the city commission, it got called up, that was another round. So part of the deal is sometimes you'll see at least what's in the staff report, and what moves along as it goes from public hearing to public hearing. That may or may not change, but the actual public hearing where it gets approved, it's possible that night the commission will add or change a condition of approval that night. So you either have to be there at the meeting or be listening in and watching that meeting, and I don't think that's what this committee wants to necessarily do. But just know that those conditions of approval show up in that first public hearing staff report. And
Well, you as a citizen can also input what you would want to have as conditions of approval. Your suggestions, now they may or may not take the suggestions, but sometimes they do. I know that in the case of the new development up between Ames Street and Holcomb Boulevard, the suggestion was that all the homes, regardless of their R rating, R10 or R8, all of the homes have the R10 front setback. And that was a citizen's suggestion, and that became one of the conditions. So it can work if you feel strongly about something. Let the Planning Commission know about it.
Yeah, they are responsive, I will say that, and they do consider citizen other inputs besides staff and developer.
I think our Planning Commission.
Chairman, you're talking about the Legacy Project. Some of you may have seen it on Wednesday the 30th from 3 to 6 p.m. They're going to have a design and comment period at Abernathy Center from 3 to 6. So, one good place to talk about transportation there too. Probably.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, John.
March 30th? You know what time?
3 to 6.
Yeah.
Abernathy Center.
The old post office.
You mean the one in the floodplain?
Yeah.
Second post office. Old post office.
Yeah.
Our current post office is old.
No, our current post office is new.
Not the one down at,
Must be
Depends
time
on
to
your
adjourn,
definition
Mr.
of new and
Chairman.
old. I'm sorry, Henry.
Depends on how long the line is when you go up there.
corner of Main and 99.
There you go. I used to go there when I was a kid.
Okay, so the only other thing, can we bring down the screen real quick? Sure. I know.
It's off by an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, boy, we're moving right along here, aren't we? We started at 6 and it's only 20 after.
So this may be more detail than you can even see. So this may be I just got this today and I was playing with it so we applied for a state grant. Actually, it's federal funding, but it's administered through the state. And I think I talked about this. This is Main Street from 10th Street to 15th, right? So it was a project that, can you get this one on?
Yeah, it should. Let's see.
So we had an outstanding application, but we didn't get picked. So we, unfortunately, the competition was pretty heavy. So there was 21 projects, like over $40 million request, and there was 10.7 million to actually fund projects with. And so really only 5 projects are on what they call the 150% list. So, yeah, we don't have it up yet, Henry. So maybe we'll get it up. Anyway, so this year, I think it was really Clackamas County that was pushing pretty hard. They wanted, the rest of the state had what they call acts that answered to another committee that, so every region had an act that was made up of different, they made up of different, that each one of them is a little different in how they're made up, but it's basically a group of people that helps the Oregon, I'm forgetting, the Transportation Commission, or OTC, Oregon Transportation Commission, helps them make final decisions on a lot of things, but in this case it was about this grant funding. And so Clackamas County says we would like an act for our region, and our region includes the big portion of Washington County, a big portion of Multnomah County, Hood River, Hood County, and Clackamas County. And so they got one. So now we have a Region 1 Act. There we go.
Does that exclude the metro area?
Does not exclude the metro area.
Ooh, they're not happy.
So I think that's really kind of what the county wanted, was a rural act that excluded everything but the metro area. They didn't get a rural act, and the state said, no, we'll support an act for Region 1, but it's going to include the metro cities. And so
both they were in before.
that act, I'll go ahead and play with this now. Does this thing work? Yeah. So that act is made up of, I think, 30 different people from around the metro area, and really not just the metro area. So each county was given an opportunity to figure out how it was going to assign its members to the act. And I think Multnomah County, because it's got Portland in it, they got 8 members on the act. And Washington County, I think, got 7, and Clackamas County got 7, and Hood County got 5, and then there's some like freight and biking and metros on the county, and ODOT's got a member on this act, on this group of folks that are making, transportation related decisions. And in this case, the award of the projects that would be on what they call the 150% cut list went to the act, right? And so what I understood was the 21 projects were packaged and handed to each of these act members, and they scored them individually, and then came back to the state and handed them their scores, and that's some of the information that I was going to share. But our project scored well, very well, across the region, but we tied for 6th place, and there was really, based on the funding that was being asked for, the top 5 project, or the top 5 projects were funded and were something that they could have. Well, they were funded within the 150% list. There's still this other 50% that needs to be lopped off because they can't afford to do all of them. But they were using the act to get to the 150% list. And so we got the details. We asked for the details, and they gave them to us. I'm not sure why it's not showing up here very well. But can anybody see this very well? Can you see the details?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so on the left of the screen are all the different jurisdictions, and some jurisdictions had more than one project. But those are, right here is the jurisdiction, and here is the project list. And right now we have them sorted in the order in which they scored. So the lower the score, the lowest score was the top picked project. So if you liked your project, you picked if your favorite project was number 1 on your list of projects to pick, right? So if you were an individual on this list, your top project was number 1, second project was number 2, 3, all the way down through 21. And Oregon City is right here. That's our project. And let me see if I can scroll back this way a little bit. So our estimated project cost was $2.4 million. We were proposing a $792,000 match, which was a 32% match. So you can,
Against the 25 required? What was the minimum match?
10.37
Okay.
or 10.33. Yeah, I think it was.
It's not 2.7?
I'm trying to remember.
10.27?
10.27, yeah. 10.27. So, the top picked project was this Washington County project, and it had the lowest scores, meaning it was the most favored. They only offered up a 10.27% match. I don't know why it says 10.33, but maybe because they're offering a little bit more money. I don't know. The second project was Portland, and they were offering a 50% match. One of the criteria was match, right? Some people thought that was favorable, others not. But we offered a pretty good match. And if I sort these by match amount, I can do that. Thought sort by. I went the wrong way, didn't I?
Are the colored blocks the names of the people on the act who voted?
Right. They are. We'll get to that, Don. I'm just taking my time here because there's a lot of numbers here. So the highest project was the Clackamas County project that they provided us. They were proposing to provide a 70% match, and this is this project here. I don't know all the project, but I remember this project. They were proposing to build a pedestrian overpass from, say, one side of 205 to the other side of 205, right there near the town center. So I think the location of this was adjacent to and pretty close to Sunnyside Road. So if you've ever tried to walk that section, you know that the sidewalks across the bridge aren't very wide, and they were proposing a completely new suspension kind of bridge that would allow for pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to cross. That was their project, and they were proposing a 70% match. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all the details, but what I wanted to show you was, so we just got this today, and we started looking at these because we were curious about where maybe we could have done better, or maybe how some of the members scored us. So we found for our project, we were ranked 1 through 5, which is kind of a more favorable project, by 7 members of the ACT. We didn't get any top pick projects, so nobody picked our project as the top pick project, but there were 7 people that picked us as ranking as 1 through 5, and there were 14 people that ranked us as 6 through 10, and 6 from 11 to 15, and 4 from 6 to 21. And then we didn't get any last picks either, so we weren't first on anybody's project choice, nor were we last. But that's kind of the breakout of how we landed. So then we took that and we wanted to see. So again, this top screen tells you Multnomah County. This guy represents freight. This is another Multnomah County, Washington County. So these initials up here represent the jurisdiction that they're from. These actually represent, these kind of represent the type of jurisdiction, so Washington County, but these represent the jurisdiction. So this guy represented or was on the Multnomah County's list of ACT members, but he's really from OHSU. I don't know if it's a he or she, but this person's from OHSU. This one's from Washington County, but it's a Tigard, the mayor of Tigard who's sitting in on that. And so for Clackamas County, we have our 7 members include someone from Lake Oswego City Council, the mayor from Happy Valley, Commissioner Savas from the Clackamas County Commission, the mayor of Canby, Beaver Creek Hamlet is on our committee. This guy is a private, he's from the private sector. He's got a lumber business, and he was a citizen member from Clackamas County. So those are our Clackamas County ACT members. You guys following me so far, or am I just boring you? This is interesting stuff here. You guys got to really. So, and again, these are.
So says an engineer.
These are just last names of folks that. So, for those of you that know Happy Valley, Mayor Dreamer is the mayor of that. Commissioner I can't remember if that's how he pronounces it. Gudman from Lake Oswego, Commissioner Savas. So, for one. The top pick folks didn't necessarily come from, they didn't pick our project. Those people from Clackamas County, there was really one, I think, maybe 2. No, there was only one representative from Clackamas County that picked our project higher in that 1 to 5 range, right? So, that troubled me a little bit. Looking at the Washington County project, a lot of the Washington County members picked at least the top project they were all shooting for. They had, clearly spoken to one another and figured out
They caucused.
that is our best project. So we may not all have the same vote throughout the list, but we're going to make sure we get, make sure we're have consensus on what our top project is. So for the most part, that's kind of where they're at. I don't know if they caucused. I don't know if they just all felt that project was really important, but from the scores, that's kind of what it looked like.
Sounds like business as usual.
Well, I don't know. I still think we scored really well.
Oh, you scored well, but that's the way they did it when I went there. The same way, same people.
Well, yeah, it's hard to say. What I was a little disappointed with was that we score. There were some scores. So this line here in tan represents our project. Mm-hmm. We got a score of 15 that I thought was pretty low. Especially we can actually sort these by this particular rater and see how that played out. I thought 20 from the Canby mayor to have a Clackamas County project score that low. Knowing as much as I know about our project and some of these others, it just surprised me that we would have ranked that low by that particular person, especially when you think of we were going to, our work was going to improve the transit center, and Canby uses our transit center. There was probably likely to be some improvements that would have helped the commuter between Canby and Oregon City.
Was there general information about jurisdictions that have been funded, had projects funded in the last 3 to 5 years, so that there might have been a tendency to, they got one, so even though I'll give them a little lower score because they got some money last time.
I don't know that they provided that. They may have known that information, but that's one little piece that seems to kind of get lost. For instance, be nice to see how much project load ODOT gets, because they get a lot of funding, right? They tend to secure a lot of funding. They got a lot of need, right? So they probably should. But
This is all federal funding.
this
federal
here
money?
is federal funding, yeah.
And
We were second to last scoring by ODOT. surprised me. I didn't know. I still want to talk to this guy and go, what the heck? But so 3 of the 7 county representatives seem to score our project much lower than I thought we should have been. What does that mean? I don't really know, other than we didn't get it. We're not crying about it, but it's interesting to look at the numbers. And I'm not sure how much of this to really share, and I kind of want to run it by you guys, see if you thought it was, if that was meaningful or just a bunch of rubbish. Probably, if I thought that, then I probably wouldn't share that with the city commission.
Well, I would say it sounds like politics as usual, and that some of these projects may be, in fact, follow-up projects to others that had been done before, a year or two before, and was actually phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kind of a thing. Some of these look like they may have voted for projects that would benefit their community, but not necessarily the county. The Happy Valley ones might be more interested in being able to deal with Clackamas Town Center and Milwaukee area than with Oregon City. So, there's way more to this, I think, than what meets the eye.
Yeah, than the county lines necessarily.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to interest me is the matching funds percentage. Those. You'd think you'd give more weight to a more matching.
That's only in a rational situation.
So I was looking at row 2, column H, Trailblazers. Is that the Portland Trailblazers basketball team?
I think there's a I saw that too, and I don't know exactly, but I do believe that is Multnomah County and someone who, is affiliated with Trailblazers. Now, these acts, there wasn't really, the membership for the acts was chosen through another regional group that we call in Clackamas County C4. So the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee is a group that Commissioner Savas chairs, as does, I think, the mayor of Canby. They're the 2 co-chairs for that. And there's representatives from all the cities, metro and then rural cities have representation there. The transit districts that serve the county have representation there. TriMet is there, ODOT is there, Metro is there. So it's a big group that is mostly representatives of Clackamas County, and they picked their membership from that C4 membership. I don't know I don't think that's what Multnomah County did, but I don't know what their equal planning group is. I know Washington County has a similar kind of group. I don't know, Jonathan, you may know a little bit more about that than I do.
My worry about this new act is that the rural areas are going to suffer.
Oh, that's a given.
Prior to that, I think they had some funding, and Metro is its own entity, and now I think it's that the rural areas could suffer because of this. Because Metro or the urban areas are going to suck it all up.
They were advocating for this, but they wanted a rural act. They didn't want.
Yeah, that makes sense because Metro was always the act for the area, and now that they're going with this, I foresee that the rural areas are going to suffer.
Even more than they have in the past.
Yeah.
Anyway, still.
I would just be cautious on the message. I think the message would be, we had a really good application.
Yep, and we scored well.
And we scored well.
Yeah.
I think other than that, you could be treading into some political
Yeah.
hot water, and
Yeah.
and I would
Avoid that.
avoid that.
What I can
Is there
say
any
is that
more grants in the near future that we would be going after?
Metro's about to, well, not about, I think in November they're scheduled to open up their grant. I mean, there are lots of other little grants. I mean, we're trying to track some of those. Some of them are just not even projects that we
money.
would even get close to being able to qualify for. You know, there's a lot of little grants that probably aren't hardly worth the money that we'd have, you know, the effort that we'd have to track to get the grant. You know, there's a lot of that. But
Are there still HUD grants, and are we still eligible for them?
HUD grants.
We did a lot of work up in Park Place with HUD grants.
Yeah, was that more for cleanup of the wastewater?
No, that was a lot of the streets got paved up there with HUD.
Yeah, I don't hear about that much. I
Yeah, I
haven't heard
think
of HUD funding.
HUD's kind of lost its way.
Yeah.
It's lost its mission.
Okay, well, with that, I'm done.
Good presentation.
Okay, thank you, John. Future agenda items, we have the gas tax and alternative transportation safety funding, 10-year plan overview, safe routes to school program. Anybody else have any future agenda items they'd like to have us pursue?
I'd like to bring one thing up, but maybe only a question rather than an agenda item, but we've talked about speed trailers a lot, and what, everybody wants them, but is there a policy about putting speed trailers and blocking the bicycle lane?
We try not to when we have the room. But we don't have a written policy that would prohibit that.
On the other hand, a lot of the places we want to put the trailers, there's only a travel lane and a little bit of a shoulder and maybe a bicycle lane.
It was a speed trailer on Myers Road that I was looking at, and it just a travel lane and a bike lane, and then the curb and gutter. So it was blocking the bike lane. So.
Anybody else have anything they want to bring up?